Hi everyone, welcome to the Moments That Could Change Football Forever podcast with me, Peter Prickett, and my co-author, Peter Thornton.
Hi.
Today we are joined by Matt Riley, the author of Kit and Caboodle, Her Game 2, and shortly, Thai Football Tales. Hi, Matt.
Hi guys, nice to talk to you, Peters. Really nice to be on your show.
Welcome on. And we like to try and give our guests the choice of chapters from the book, or indeed to come up with a what if of their own. And Matt, what have you chosen to have a chat about?
Yeah, I'm really glad to be looking at the chapter about Eric Cantona. Huge fan of him as a player and as a person. I was in Manchester at the time when he was in his pomp. I was a student there, and I was really interested by the way that your book looked at that kind of heroic departure of his at 30 and looked at what could have happened if he decided to carry on. And it really got me thinking about some of the choices that we make in our lives and how that has an enormous effect on the future actions. So Eric Cantona is the man for me in lots of different ways.
So I actually remember. Sorry, Pete.
I was just going to say, do you want to just outline what the premise you came to in the book, the conclusion you came into in the book, so we can sort of kick off from there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, one of the key things for me is that it's not just this idea that he left. If he'd have stayed, what would have happened? It was this whole sequence of different things, because as you know, in football, it's so much about the chemistry. You know, you've taken away this wonderfully arrogant leader of men, and you're putting in replacements that may still be good players, but that certain chemistry that he had, the fact that, you know, he was bulletproof with Sir Alex Ferguson, he could do whatever he liked, and Fergie would never, ever punish him and punish everyone else, and that everyone accepted it. So for me, it was the idea that maybe people look at your book and think, if A didn't happen, then B would happen. But I think it's much, much more than that. There are so many moving parts to his decision, the way that he did it at 30, and, you know, would it be better? You know, I used to play football and people always said, you're a long time retired, keep playing. But I love the way that he decided, no, he's going to go on his terms. He didn't feel that he played to his top talent at the time, and he just walked away and did his acting, not always that good, but generally went to. I love the book. What was the film? Looking for Eric in 2009.
Yeah.
I love that film. But then he did play himself, so that wasn't a difficult role.
As an actor, he was a really good footballer, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, unless he's playing himself. And he was brilliant. I love that film. But some of the others are, oh, gosh. It was cringeworthy, some of his performances. But yeah, that for me, it was the idea that what your book did is it made me think more about not just football, but the way that these tiny decisions that we make in our lives, or even massive ones like Cantona, have repercussions that just carry on and on through our lives or our careers or whatever it may be. And that's what really, really attracted me to reading your book.
Just for the listeners, Peter, do you want to just encapsulate that chapter? What became the conclusion?
The line of thought process goes something along the lines of, essentially, Eric retires. Manchester United want to still play in a similar style, so they replace him with Teddy Sheringham, a player who, in theory, has many of similar attributes: the ability to create from a slightly deeper position, good in the air, link with play. But Teddy doesn't have a great first season, and Manchester United aren't particularly successful. So they take another approach and they go out and sign Dwight York, basically to replace Eric's replacement. They then go on to win the treble based on partly or massively, I suppose, on the partnership between York and Cole. And then come those two cup finals that they reach, Teddy Sheringham scores in both of them. So my theory is, with Eric still there, you don't have Teddy to score the 2 goals, and you don't have the York and Cole partnership. There's other factors, such as the captaincy not going to Roy Keane, and maybe other of the younger players, Beckham and Scholes, who are still finding their feet, perhaps not stepping up to the level that they did with Cantona, his personality, you know, over the top of everything. So that's where I go to in the book, saying Cantona doesn't retire, United probably don't win the treble that season or perhaps ever.
We've always said if you had a big United fan on the show, though, they'd say, "Oh, we would have won it earlier with Eric." I mean, they win two doubles with Eric, but they could never just push on and win the big one with him, did they? He never got to pick big ears up, as it's called, did it?
We struggled in Europe with him.
Yeah.
With
Did you feel? Sorry, Matt. Did you feel that buzz when you were in Manchester as a student?
Yeah, I really loved being there. I actually lived I'll show how old I am as well. I was just down the road from Main Road that was at City. And it's a wonderful city because it's, you've got the university, the Polytechnic that was, you've got the, Royal Northern College of Music, you've got the, you missed all these places, and it was such an energetic city. I took my wife there, and of course it rained all day, and she's from Sussex. She's not interested in that, but there was a massive buzz. I was there in the Manchester Times and Factory Records and all of that. And I have wonderful memories of Manchester, and the fact that I could just rock up to Old Trafford, I could just rock up to Main Road and just watch a game. I stood on the Kippax a lot at Main Road, but now you've got no chance of just doing that and just sort of in the morning waking up and thinking, "Oh, I'll go and watch United or I'll go and watch City." It's so different, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I must confess now I'm a Mancunian, but I'm from the blue half of Manchester. So.
Oh right, yeah. I lived in Rusholme. Where is it? Rusholme? I think it was. No, I think near Rusholme, wasn't it? Where Main Road was. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Long time ago, obviously, but yeah, it was great. A really fantastic city. It's a really vibrant, creative, sort of brave city. There's always trying to push the boundaries and do really interesting things, especially with the music, of course, and the football. But when I first went there, United were in the sort of graveyard of careers phase, where you go to United and that would be the end of you before Ferguson came from Aberdeen.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting that so many United fans pick him in the all-time 11. So I sort of accept that he, had a fantastic influence, but in terms of like pure raw talent, I never sort of see him up there with the great United players.
But for me,
I'm a lot older, so grew up with Charles Law and Best. Is he? I
of course
never put him in that class.
No, there was a certain magic to him, though.
Yes.
Like with Best, there's something about that wonderful arrogance that I really love because, now you've got cookie cutter players, obviously we give 110% for the gaffer and let's focus on the next game. And he would stand in front of the French FA and tell them exactly what he thought of them, and that magic for me is, it may not have meant that they'd won the double and everything else, but this incredible sort of swagger was just a wonderful thing to see. And of course, there weren't that many foreign players at the time, were there, in the top league?
Nowhere near as many, no.
No, and it was just fantastic. But the other side of that, and I was interested, Peter, when you gave him the summary, is he did cast a very, very long shadow, didn't he? Because he had such a strong personality. I think some of the younger players were probably maybe in awe of him or confused by the messages that Ferguson was giving out. And maybe that was in the negative side of the ledger for him moving forward, when obviously United were looking to get back into winning ways.
I feel that when he was signed, that United needed that last step because they came very close the year before when Leeds won the title. I think it was 2 defeats towards the end of the season, one of them at Anfield, that meant that they couldn't win the title, and they were top for a lot of that season, and they needed that one more step, and that one more step could have been Dion Dublin. So we talk about sliding doors moments. If Dion Dublin doesn't get injured,
so lucky, wasn't he? Oh,
yeah, but if he doesn't get injured, they might not have gone out and signed Eric.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the beauty of your concept as well, I think, guys, is that there's so many things kind of previewing the point and leading on from the point. All those things had to be in place for that phone call to be made to Leeds, and whether it's apocryphal or not, oh, by the way, is Cantona available? The phone may not have got picked up, or Ferguson hadn't thought of it at the time, and that's what makes it wonderfully kind of, again, magical that this event happened, and it was almost like it was meant to be.
He wasn't there immediately at the start of the first Premier League season. He had enough time to be the first scorer of a Premier League hat-trick for Leeds.
Yeah,
So
I think that's what makes him iconic as well for me. Is of course he bestrode, for want of a better word, the pre and the post Premier League era, didn't he? Really.
I love that idea that Fergie just rings up and goes, "I don't suppose Eric's available, is he?" Because
Yeah,
clearly that's gone out the window a long time ago, hasn't
yeah,
it? With
yeah.
all
I'd
the
say it's
agents.
apocryphal, but it's one of those agent spin stories that lasts a long time. Doesn't it?
Yeah,
The truth is
brilliant.
less interesting.
I know Sheffield Wednesday fans who, like, obviously still not over the fact that they could have had him first.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And you don't sometimes you just don't see it. My local club, I'm a season ticket for Exeter City, and you look at a player and you think, my goodness, he's not up to much, and then suddenly they get a move and magical things happen that you just didn't see. And I've seen Ollie Watkins when he's 16, Ethan Ampadu play when he's 15, and you can see that magic. But sometimes there are things that have to happen around the player for them to really take off, and I think that unconditional love of Ferguson was that platform that Cantona needed.
Yeah,
if Dublin doesn't get injured, that means they start with Dion Dublin and Mark Hughes as the top two. Can we see really that front line winning a league title?
See, for me, I don't think there's enough creativity there. Hughes was when I was at Old Trafford watching him play, he was old school, wasn't he? The cameras would be on him now, but when he's off the ball, he's doing all sorts to the opposition. Couldn't get away with now. And I really like Dublin as a player, but for me, I wouldn't think so. I just think that there's not that X factor in that combination. They're both very strong in the air, even though Hughes is obviously not as tall as Dublin. But there wouldn't be those breathtaking moments, the chip and the collar and all these kind of things that Cantona added to the player, which I think inspired the other players as well. I think Dublin's a very hard-working player, always was. A horrible injury, wasn't it? That was such a horrible injury. Hughes is a ramrod, and he was very, very effective at what he did. But again, for me, I just don't think the chemistry's there. The Cantona was that missing piece of the elemental table that made United whole.
Yeah, it's quite interesting what you said before, Matt. I think the class of '92 all say it was Eric and Eric's sort of discipline in training, etc., etc. Everyone sort of sees him as a maverick, but the class of '92 said he set the standards in training.
Yeah,
that they all followed long after he'd gone.
Yeah, he did the hard yards, isn't he? He did. It's like with Beckham, isn't it? They did the hard yards, the extra hours of training. Yeah. But the great thing about Cantona and like these magical players is they made it look like they hadn't done it, didn't they? They made it look like they just turned up. They put his collar up and he did a bit of running around. But he was doing the extra press-ups and sit-ups and laps and corners and penalty kicks when everyone else was, well, in the pub, I'll be honest with you. There's plenty of lads I saw from United in the pub in Manchester when I was there. And that's the great thing, that it all comes down to the grind. He had the grind, but he had that extra something that so few players have, especially nowadays.
And he clearly had that little bit of devilment as well. I mean, one of my favourite Eric moments is when in the game against Wimbledon, when Vinny decides he's had enough of Eric strutting round and he just takes him out completely, doesn't he?
Yeah.
With like 2 feet, Eric goes up in the air, but Eric gets up and stands there, as proud as he ever does, and stares right back at him. And
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, you remind me of a quote from him. He said, "The only person I play against is myself." And again, these sort of poetic gestures of his, they're just, for me, I'm not a United fan, I'm not a City fan, but for me, it resonates through all these years since he sort of retired in 97. It's just that lasts so much longer than just being a like Peter With, he put his head where he wouldn't put a shovel, and I loved watching him. But there's that resonance to Cantona, I think, that just stands a test of time, and things like that. Like you say, Jones was thinking he'd be rolling around the floor, and the revenge for Cantona is, if that's all you've got, you're going to have to give me more, because your 2-footed lunge is not going to do anything to me. Yeah, fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Of course, his own 2-footed lunge is probably the iconic moment in Premier League history. One of them certainly be top 5, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, he put the full beans behind that, didn't he? He really got his revenge in first, and again, that adds to that sort of bad boy image, the the sort of poetic images, and people always used to say about the the sardines coming from the trawler and it was mad and everything else. I mean, it makes perfect sense, isn't it? The trawler is the players, the information, and it's the journalists that are searching for tidbits from the back. And
I always thought that made perfect sense. Maybe it was just me, but everyone go, oh, nonsense. Like,
yeah,
no,
I think because the journalist knew exactly what he was saying, they didn't want to say, well, actually, yeah, we are feeding from the scraps of information from players, because many of us are failed players or never were players. And again, that's why I love that idea. He's misunderstood by people who don't listen, but people who listen to him, for me, he told a really coherent and inspiring story. I've read, I don't know if that's apocryphal, but I've read that when he lived in Manchester, he used to go down to the local pub, be seen by the locals. He lived in a house that wasn't a gated palace, certainly for people I spoke to when I was there. And that again adds to the legend for me.
Yeah, I think he had that attitude to Manchester, similar to what Guardiola has now, where Guardiola wanted to live right in the centre of Manchester, and he does when he lives in Manchester. And Eric was the same. I think he wanted to feel the vibe of the fans and the people and get under the skin of it. And you've got to admire that. There's so many foreign players come over and then live in their little tower and then go home, don't they? But
and it's interesting you say that, Peter. Yeah, because it makes me think about Guardiola and the man he admires the most of Bielsa. And when he was at Leeds, he lived above a sweet shop, I think, and all he asked for was videotapes of the opposition and the obsession. And Guardiola is the same, isn't it? That massive obsession with getting better. And you put those, I think, the sort of Cantona, Guardiola, and Bielsa are peas from a similar pod. They just love football. They don't love all the other stuff. They want to talk to Mancunians. They want to find out about a wonderful, vibrant city. And they just want to be great footballers, and the rest has no value to them. I don't think so anyway with Cantona. I remember,
No, go on, Matt. Sorry.
I was going to say, I remember listening to Liam Gallagher talk about a video that that Cantona made with him, and Liam Gallagher asked him to be in the video. And he said, well, how much do I pay you? And Cantona said, nothing. He said, okay, so I'll buy you some wine. He said, nothing. He said, what about hotel? Nothing. And Liam Gallagher was shocked. I mean, it takes a lot to shock Liam Gallagher. He said, Cantona flew over, he did the video, refused to even get food paid for him, and then he just disappeared. And I've taken out all the fruity language that Liam Gallagher says. But at the end of the video, Liam Gallagher says, and for Liam Gallagher to say this, he says, that is what a real legend is. And that's a Gallagher, a City man, talking about Man United. Yeah, for me, that's unbelievable testament to the man. Not a penny would he take. He liked Liam Gallagher's song. He wanted to be in the video. He didn't need all the trappings.
I was just going to say, wind the tape back a little bit. Peter, did you watch the Kung Fu Kick live?
No. It was a weeknight, so I'm pretty sure it was shown.
It was on the news. It was like news.
But it may have been. It might have been Match of the Day, or it might have been something else in the evening. But I remember watching it that night.
Did you watch it live, Matt?
I don't think I did. I was just thinking. I think I caught it like you did, as being, the worst thing anyone's ever done. Never mind about the wars and terrorism. Somebody's booted an idiot.
That's how it
in
was
the
depicted,
crowd.
wasn't it? No, I did watch it live. Stood in a pub in Manchester, and it was mad because
I may have been listening on Radio 5 actually.
Yeah, the world stopped. It was like because you think, he's killed someone. You thought he could have killed someone at the time.
Yeah, it is astonishing, absolutely astonishing. And I think even to this day, I think I heard him say, Cantona saying, my only regret is he didn't hit the hooligan harder, sort of thing, And but it was people would take. For me, the pressures took leave of their senses. You'd think of all of the mass killings and all the things that are going on, and it was he's booted a thug who deserved to be booted, from what I've certainly read about it, and everyone was trying to outbid each other in their moral outrage, and their kind of performative moral outrage.
I quite like that edge because I loved the fact why Zidane got sent off in the World Cup final. Didn't matter, it was a World Cup final. Don't speak about my family like that.
Exactly.
It's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing because, you could say, people don't want that to happen. People don't want to see that. Yes, they do. Yeah. If you insult my wife or you insult my children, that's what my job is, to insult the children. But if you insult my family, things will happen. And what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to say, let's discuss it later. His blood was up. iconic headbutt to the chest, and an Italian went down who was injured. And these are all headlines been waiting to be written.
It was great though. Eric's kung fu kick didn't get any less coverage because it was Crystal Palace than the World Cup, did it? It was
absolutely astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. But yeah, again, there's something compelling rather than repelling about him. It's a little bit like, I was in Manchester in the times of Paul McGrath, and I remember watching the local, who was it? I forget it was. Might be Richard Keys at the time, interviewing him and Whiteside. And I remember it really clearly. I said to my mates, I said, these lads are drunk. And this was the night before a game. And it's like that moment when George Best was on Wogan. You walk past the TV and you think, I can't believe I'm seeing this. And then suddenly, bang, he's gone. But McGrath, same sort of thing, that magic, the things I saw him do on a pitch. I even invited him to my wedding. Paul McGrath. Luckily for my wife, he didn't come. Otherwise, I might have proposed to him instead. But, it's these are all the things that are real. And again, I feel, without wanting to be too much of an old codger, it's what we're missing. And that's why I like the League One football at Exeter. It's real. You get booted, you fall over, you can lie there, and we'll pick it up later.
Is this realism, the flawed genius, being that last sprinkling of magic, the charisma, all of these things the reason why the United fans will name Cantona in that best 11? No, he may not be as talented is harsh, but he may not have been as good as some of the other players. But because of all the X factors, and that he was the one who came in and delivered that title that they wanted, all of these things mean that he becomes an almost automatic pick.
Definitely. I think Roy Keane's not a big fan of bigging people up, but the thing he did, to add to what you said, Peter, is Roy Keane said that Cantona scored the key goals at the key times. That's a very special player who can do that. The kind of the pinch hitter or the buzzer 3-point shot in basketball. And for Roy Keane to say that, for me, that's what goes to the heart of Cantona. When everyone is thinking we are really struggling now, he's thinking, this is my chance. This is it. This is my Air Jordan moment. And again, that's a magical thing, isn't it, to witness? That he could slow down time like Paul McGrath used to do. I always felt Cantona at his best, he would bend time to his will. And that's so rare. So rare. Now they're running around like greyhounds, aren't they? Or thoroughbred horses. But he would slow it down. The game would have to bend to what he wanted. And again, I'm totally neutral because I don't support the teams that he played for. But I just feel tremendous magic. And also, he didn't grow old. For me, that's another thing as well. I saw when I was in Thailand. I worked for a team, and Robbie Fowler played for us. And he was way, way past his prime. I took my wife to a game. She said, "Who's that bloke with the big backside?" And I said, that is a very famous footballer called Robbie Fowler. And you never saw that with Cantona. You only saw him at his prime. I think that's also something that's really important, that's a key part of that chapter of yours, guys.
It's almost like that Marilyn Monroe thing, isn't it? They died, you die young. Sorry, Pete, what are you going to say?
I said he left the people wanting more.
Yeah, you should.
So, Matt, if he doesn't retire,
what
do you think happens to Manchester United?
I think their results would not have been as good, but the experiences would have been amazing. I come back to that earlier point. I think he cast such a massive shadow, particularly as there were so many young players. I feel that the changes that were made after he retired were the best in terms of results, but there were dramas to be written that weren't written because Cantona wasn't there. That's the feeling that I have. You mentioned he wasn't quite as good in Europe. He probably would have had disciplinary issues moving forward, let's be honest. But there would have been incredible things that people would still be talking about today that, as great as, York was a wonderful player, absolutely wonderful, and Cole as well, when he was Andy and then Andrew and all the rest of it. But there was, I think that the attention and there's kind of like this magnetic pull of Cantona, results-wise, probably wouldn't have been as effective, but drama-wise, I just think it would have been absolutely magical because you never knew what he's going to do, did you?
No.
especially in the French FA, and you're trying to tell him off. And he's calling you, you're mad, you're an idiot, and you're an idiot, and you're an idiot, you know? So the kind of the rebel in me, and the rebel in him, of course, the rebel in me is I love him to have carried on. Yeah. But I know, and I think maybe Ferguson knew in his heart of hearts that this was almost too good to be true. You know, this was a dangerous liaison. And it's probably, you know, you can imagine that he said, okay, Eric, I respect it. But if he'd really wanted to, I do wonder whether Ferguson could have said, I need you. I want one more year out of you. And maybe he'd have stayed out of loyalty. But yeah, again, in terms of results, I think they did the right thing for the results. But as a neutral, I'd love to have seen him wreak havoc for a couple more years.
Well, you're just giving the example that they couldn't buy him. You know, Liam couldn't buy him.
Exactly.
United could obviously not buy him, could they?
But loyalty. You know, I felt that loyalty was the key driver for him. Loyalty to Manchester. You know, loyalty after his ban. Loyalty to Ferguson. Loyalty from the people of Manchester. You know that when you're driven by loyalty and you don't care about the money, you've got so many choices. In a way, too many choices. Because if he didn't have that loyalty, he probably would have thought, "Crikey, I'm 30 now. You know, I'm a long time retired. I better stay a bit longer." But no, he just stood out of all of the rules of engagement that you expect, and he said, "I'm not playing so well. You know, I'm off."
Well, Ferguson showed loyalty to him after the Kung Fu kick, but Ferguson has been or had been ruthless and had dealt with big characters by getting rid of them once they became too big or they were heading towards the point where they were no longer useful. Could there have been, not at age 30, because I don't think that would have happened, but maybe 31, 32, would we maybe then have seen the ruthless side of Ferguson come out? And rather than this thought process of, well, of course, Eric stays on, he still plays. He plays till he's like 34, 35, and then he calls it a day there. Does Ferguson go, actually, goodbye? I've got these coming through.
Definitely. When you were saying that, Peter, I was thinking about Jaap Stam, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, he was such a phenomenal player, and Ferguson got rid of him in a heartbeat. And I think it would have got to that because at those 31, 32, 33, he'd have either had to adapt to his game or change his position or being less effective, and Ferguson would have to make that decision. I do wonder about Ferguson, though, again, because I feel like the loyalty really burns hard with Ferguson. I do wonder whether Ferguson would do that because, you know, you look at Jaap Stam, as wonderful a player as he was, there wasn't that incredible close connection. And I think in a way, Cantona was Ferguson's man on the inside as well, you know, and obviously you've got Keane and you've got these massive characters, but there was something that Ferguson had, that iron grip, but I think there was something that he was attracted to about the rebelliousness of Cantona. You know, I was watching, there's been so many great documentaries, hasn't there? But, you know, the thing about everyone had to wear a tie and a blazer and all the uniform. Cantona turns up in a T-shirt and a pair of trainers, and the players are getting in the crash position ready for carnage. And he just says, okay, next time, can you please wear a suit, you know? I think Ferguson almost needed that exception to prove his rule.
What if Brian Clough had managed England?
What if Ronaldo and Messi had played together?
What if Pep Guardiola managed in League Two?
These are just some of the things discussed in the brand new book, Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. Every what if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones.
Yeah. I could see him playing as a register as he got older.
Absolutely. That football intelligence he's got.
Yeah. Sat in front of the back four, picking it up, spraying it around. You could see him doing that when he was older, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah. You're looking 34, 35, because he looked after himself, as we mentioned before. He trained so hard. He could easily have had another 4 or 5 years, dropping further back. And then, again, that football intelligence. Again, getting back to Paul McGrath, you know, he didn't train. His knees were shot to pieces. But he read the game so well, and Cantona read the game so well. You know, when I went to Old Trafford and just saw him, and just thought, oh my goodness me, you know, this is a man that stands head and shoulders above people. He knows, almost like he knows the future, where the ball's going to be and players going to be, and all those elements that make a game up. It was a real privilege.
And Eric was no worse a tackler than Paul Scholes, and he got I suppose it would have been at that age what those things can happen. It's either Fergie gets rid of him, Fergie drops him deeper, or a reduced role, which if a reduced role happens, I could only imagine that would have been retirement occurs again.
Yeah, and I think that would have been messy, Peter.
Accepting it.
Yeah, I think that would have been messy because you've got a diminished Cantona, but with still that massive ego that drives him and that fierce sense of loyalty. And I think that would be a horribly heady mix, which again, as we were saying before, comes back to that point that, you know, at 30 to jack it in, it's a wonderful, in a way, heroic gesture in some ways. You know, if it was me, I would have just carried on until I was playing in League One and League Two and National Conference, you know, and Sunday pub leagues. But I can see that that's part of it. That's part of that personality makeup that he has, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things we don't even talk about in the book, I think, is almost a what if, is the '98 World Cup, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you think about it, you don't think of World Cups at all, do you? You know, his international career was, you know, nothing like his club career, was it? Or nothing like his career at United, obviously.
The French FA had a good habit of falling out with its very talented players for quite a while. You look at the David Ginola incident as well, where Gerard Houllier hung him out to dry, and that soured that relationship. And same sort of thing happened with Eric, and it was only a bit later, by 1998, that they managed players better. They got in a coach who would, a bit like Ferguson did with Eric, would accept the players for some of their flaws, and you got Zidane and Djorkaeff to flourish. But Cantona, what if for his national team is quite a large one as well.
Definitely. I think these kind of players need to feel truly loved, you know, and he felt that at United, and it was almost like he was looking for a fight with the French FA, and it wasn't hard to find, you know, the way they treated him, the way they treated these players that they kind of couldn't put in a box, and he wasn't going to take a step back, and of course they didn't take a step back either, and in a way both were losers, but perhaps he was thinking maybe this is better for my career. I can play longer perhaps, or if they don't love me, I don't want to be involved in it. Because again, this is the great thing, because nowadays you have agents saying, look, you have to play for the national team because it'll add money to your value and you can sell you on. And he nowadays be the kind of person that would just say, I don't care. I just want to play for the people that love me. And if it's playing for Prestwich or playing for Manchester United, that's what I'll do, you know, and no one's going to change my mind.
It does feel like a different value system to most of the footballers who are out there now. How many players that are playing at this moment in time in 2023 do we think can we imagine would go and retire early and go and act?
That's right. There's so many pressures on them, again, from agents and from sponsors and all these different people, that really diminishes that. And there's something almost kind of pre-lapsarian about what Cantona did, because, again, people are tied up to so many things with NFTs and Saudi Arabia and whatever it might be, that they're just a commodity. You know, it's just a commodity. You're probably partly owned by a group of white label businesses and all the rest of it, and you're just exchanged like pieces of meat. And then there's Cantona, you know, and there are lots of other players like that as well, of course. I used to work in Thailand with Brian Robson, and he's another kind of incredible, dynamic and kind of individual person. But for Cantona, he, in a way, is that pre-lapsarian character of, I will decide my fate. And if you don't love me and you don't show me respect, I will go somewhere else, even if it hurts me. You know, he probably was really hurting at 30, knowing he could have had a great season the next year, but he took that hurt on his chin and moved on.
And he's also loved to have sat different interests. Sorry, Pete.
Yeah. I was going to say he'd have loved to have sat beside him during the European Cup final, wouldn't you?
Oh, crikey!
So,
yeah.
Eric, here's what you could have won.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, that wonderful insight as well, and again, getting back to the sort of concept of your book, is that what he could have offered. And again, that strange paradox of, my feeling is probably not as much on-field success, but memories. You know, it's the memories that we take with us, and people saying, oh, remember what that Cantona did when he was 31? I can't believe he did that. I know we lost the game, but wasn't it amazing what he did? you know, and there's that rebellious and that almost kind of willful negativity in a way in terms of results. It just stands out in this world of, again, commodification and agent spin. And as we get to the end of the, you know, we're just coming to the end of the.
Me and Peter, Matt, we met through sort of coaching on Twitter, and it's one of the things I always say that you have to be prepared for as a coach is some lad that you coached when he was 12 coming up to you when he's like 28 with a wife and 2 kids asking you to remember a game on a wet Tuesday, you know, and it is those things that stay with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember,
I was just about to say, Eric gave people so many, what you hit the nail on the head right at the start. He gave so many people so many good memories that they, you know, they can relate, you know, it's that's the joy of him, isn't it?
That's right. That's all we take with us, you know, I mean, whatever Neymar's getting in Saudi Arabia, whatever Newcastle are getting paid by the Saudis, that's not the memory we think of in our last breath. It's I remember when I was at Main Road, I just popped into Main Road, they were playing Aston Villa, and I still remember what Paul McGrath did with his dodgy knee. I was behind the goal and I saw almost the whole of the Man City side. It was like the Red Sea parting, and we're talking, gosh, decades ago. But that's what I'll always remember. Now, how on earth can one player do that to an entire team? Not how much Neymar's getting paid to wake up in the morning and loyalty payments for this, that, and the other.
He just fits Saudi Arabia so well, doesn't he? Neymar.
They were made for each other, and I hope they're really happy.
Well, we see, perhaps it's not as true now, but historically, it's not necessarily been the teams that have won who have had the greatest influence. We talk about a couple of them in the book. We pair them off with the Hungarian team of 54 and the Dutch of 74, but neither of them won those World Cups, even though the narrative is they should have done. But their influence is long lasting. And then a few years after 74, 1982, Brazil, everyone, I think it wouldn't be unrealistic to say that people remember the 1982 Brazil team far more than they remember the 1994 team, but actually won the tournament. So it's not, in terms of legacy, it's not necessarily about those trophies.
No, I think because when you win, for me, it's definitive. You know, you are the champions. You hold the trophy. That's it. When you lose, like as you described in the book, there's this kind of idea of glorious failure and the what ifs and the how comes and the questions. You know, when there's the world champions, there isn't those questions. There's not a question, is it? There they are. They are supposedly the best team in the world, and that idea of how did they not win it sometimes has even more resonance, I think, because you've got so many elements to think about. You know, it's astonishing what happened. You know, in my next book, there's a friend of mine that was in the Brazil changing room before they got murdered by Germany, and he was a photographer for L'Equipe, and they all got down and they had Neymar's shirt and they prayed to it. And my friend Pascal, another journalist, was there with him and just said they've got no chance here. And then Germany just took them apart because they were missing training sessions because they were going to church. They were praying to Neymar, who had a back injury, for goodness sake. And this is the idea that all that talent was there. They failed. And it's the questions that have the resonance, I think, rather than just the kind of bald fact, you know, you are the world champion, so you must be the best.
I've got a lot of superstitions, but I've never got down on my knees and prayed to a shirt. It's
astonishing, isn't it? Because you'll have seen the shirt being held up on the team lineup, but I didn't know. I was in Thailand at the time. Pascal messaged me. He said, "You won't believe what I've seen." They all got in a circle. Yeah. He wasn't allowed to take a photo of it, but they all got in a circle. His shirt was in the middle, and they prayed to a shirt. And Germany thought, happy days.
That was one of those I was there moments that you remember, wasn't it? I can remember watching that match, that particular match, going, what is going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. You just think, is this really happening? I think it was Mark Lawrenson was commentating. He said it's one of the worst, whatever it was, 20 minutes of football he'd ever seen. And again, when you hear the background of it and training sessions missed and all this sort of thing, it creates those questions in your mind, because 1 to 11, they were a really, really impressive side. Yeah. But if it's just the Germans, that definitive, you won 7-1, you must be the best. And in a way, that kind of dies out quicker than the what ifs and the conspiracy theories, of course. You know, talk of poisonings and this sort of thing. There's much more, especially in this media age that we're so anti-social media. There's much more mileage in the ones that didn't win, like you mentioned the Hungary team earlier, Peter.
Well, Brazil clearly had the mentality of treating Neymar as their footballing unicorn. But take it back to Eric, in some ways, he actually was a rare example of a unicorn that worked. That did exactly that. They could have been there praying to Eric, and the United fans certainly probably were. But if the players had been, he didn't disappoint them.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example, an early, well, maybe not early example, but the psychology that he's getting into the opponent's head as well, because it's like Mike Tyson when he was in his prime. Fighters who had been beaten before they got to the ring. And I think the other legacy, if you like, about Cantona, or the one of the sort of unique selling points of him, that idea about being a unicorn, but also you are in the opposition training, the changing rooms, and you see his name on the team sheet and think, what on earth am I going to get? Am I going to get two-footed lunge? Am I going to get a top corner goal and he puts his collar up and stares at me? What am I going to get? And I think, again, in those days of, let's be honest, when the Premier League was invented football, it was nothing much better than the first division, was it? He had something that had the mark on the opponents. I think that was a wonderfully refreshing idea, that he was psychologically towering above everyone else, as well as, and that's the other thing as well, of course, guys, he was bigger than perhaps people give him credit for. He was a big lad, wasn't he? He was tall.
Yeah. And we talked about it on today, but you forget also the laws on tackling that was still around at the time. Vinnie Jones really could take him out if you wanted and only get a yellow card.
Yeah, telling off.
Yeah, a reducer, as it was known, wasn't
it?
Yes,
a reducer. Yeah,
Keown and Adams defended, wasn't it? Martin Keown has spoken about it many times, but he would be tackling people from behind to stop them going through. And it was only as the Premier League developed that those laws changed. So people like Cantona, Giggs, the other creatives of that era had to deal with that. And it's one of the reasons we talk about Maradona, because Maradona in the modern game probably does have a record similar to Messi's, because people couldn't just kick him up in the air constantly. You take Messi back to then, and he's getting kicked around a heck of a lot.
Yeah, Pele, George Best, Pele was just brutalized, wasn't he? And the idea that first 5 minutes you don't get sent off, so you just got absolute carte blanche to do whatever you like, say, oh, ref, I'm really sorry, and you've just tried to break someone off at the knees, haven't you? And I suppose that's one of the positives of the Premier League, is they knew that they had to keep their assets playing football. You can't be having players out for a year or 2 years if they are expensive, high quality, foreign, fantastic players that are going to add value to the Premier League. So that's one of the good things. Obviously, there's plenty of things that aren't so good. But yeah, that was again the beauty of Cantona. Again, that psychology. I think it's very easy to underestimate how difficult it is to intimidate hardened professional footballers. And I think Cantona could do that without trying. It reminds me a little bit of Tyson Fury with boxing, when he beat down Klitschko before they even started. I think Cantona did that. I think opponent markers were thinking, I think my hamstring's a bit tight today. I might have to sit this one out. I would have.
It could be also that Eric was part of the Fergie time mythos and the United win. We've never lost. We've never lost the game until the game is actually done. Because Cantona was responsible for a number of those late winners. Although there's a good case maybe for the Steve Bruce game maybe being the real cornerstone of that, the two late headers. But
it was that Sheff Wednesday, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, Wednesday. 2-1 in that first season of the Premier League. But Cantona was certainly at the heart of many late winning goals.
Definitely in Fergie time. Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it. It's the idea that you're physically exhausted, you're mentally tired, but he has something that other people don't have. He has that moment of clarity despite the physical exhaustion, to do exactly what he could do in minute one. And as good as he was in training, the training now is far more scientific, but he had something. He had that extra, you go into the darkness and pull out something like a boxer in the 12th round who still do the right hook that he had in the first round. And again, absolute that magic. And it's so easy to forget that the mental strength is a very rare commodity, and he had it in spades.
Well, I think that United team had it in spades, didn't they? We talk about Fergie time, but it's really never knowing that you're going to get beaten. We were talking about it on the last podcast where we were talking about the great Real Madrid team, and in that game, Eintracht Frankfurt, the 7-3, Eintracht scored first. But even in the black and white footage, you can see all the great Real Madrid stars sort of standing there. It's nothing that will score another couple in a few minutes, which is exactly what happened.
Definitely.
And with United, you always felt they were going to score.
Yeah,
you call it Fergie time, but you always felt that they were going to get an equaliser, they were going to get a winner, and they did it so many times that it clearly wasn't an accident, was it?
Definitely, and as importantly, they believed it. You know what you lads know when you watch a football team, you can see the body language, the interaction between players, the frictions, and you just didn't get that with United. They probably looked around and thought, we're 1-0 down, but look what we've got. Look what we've got here, whatever time of the game, we can hurt teams. And that, again, is such a rare commodity because it's the easiest thing in the world, isn't it? To sort of say, come on, Peter, why didn't you pick the player up? Or that was your job. But instead you're saying, hey, Peter, guess what? I know, we both know in our heart of hearts that that's only going to put us up a gear, and they're going to wish they hadn't scored that goal.
The arrogance and confidence of knowing that you're better. Like, David Neri opening the scoring for Scotland against Brazil, and they just said all they did was pull on the tiger's tail.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I've seen a few games like that when you think, oh no, you shouldn't have scored that. They're going to really make you pay.
I have a very good friend who's a Hull City fan, and they played Arsenal in that cup final. They scored really early on, to go 1-0 up. And he felt like he went, oh no, that's too early, And then, but then they scored another, and he said, we genuinely were thinking, oh, this could be it. He didn't get beat in the end, but I think a lot of fans of teams where you're playing a giant, you get that feeling. It's like, oh no, too early. Not the first 2 minutes. Score one in the last 2 minutes. Not now.
Definitely. We had that last year in Exeter, where Ipswich Town, a fantastic team, and they went up, obviously. City scored first, and the friends of mine that were there with me, we looked at each other and thought, this is not going to end well, and it didn't.
You said something really interesting, I think, right at the very start of the podcast, where you said, that idea behind the book, those what-if moments, that made you think about other things. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's what I love a book where it resonates after you put it down. So I've been married for 27 years now, been with my wife for 30 years, but we met by absolute coincidence. It shouldn't have happened. So we were young lads. We always went to the same pubs. I don't know if it's the same with you, but there was a sort of a pub crawl, always the same pubs. We knew everyone in there. We knew the bar staff and everything else. But for some reason, one night, one of my friends and myself went to a pub we never went to, met my wife there, or my girlfriend at the time, didn't even really know her very well. And I sometimes think how my life would have been different if I hadn't met her. Would I have 2 sons? Would I have got married? Would I have met her later? And this idea of sort of serendipity, which again really attracts me about your book, is that it has to be grounded in a way on serendipity, because it was an expensive pub as well. And I'm sure you're the same, lads. I don't like overpaying for my beers. And it didn't make sense. It was a pub called The Grove on the seafront here in Exmouth. And I just don't know why I went. It was a cold evening. I'm going to a place with expensive beer, and I didn't know the bar staff. And then I met Karen, and that's again that idea that your book set off is, it's not just that binary decision of A or B. It's so many things would have been different. At Butterfly Effect, so many things would have been different. Yeah. And 30 years later, for some reason, she's still stuck with me.
It is that, and as in life, but the chapters, or each of the chapters that we wrote about, So what, one of the criteria we set up was it had to have more than one knock-on effect. It wasn't just if that goal is scored, someone wins the title. Those were not the ones that interested us. It was like, this classic example that Peter wrote about Eric. If Teddy Sheringham, if he doesn't retire, Teddy Sheringham doesn't come. And if he doesn't have a bad season, Dwight York doesn't come. And they're on the pitch. And, that lovely knock-on effect is what attracts us to, what we did. So,
definitely.
It's great to hear that it has had a resonance with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives it real heft, I think, when you like you say, you add different possibilities. So, if Karen hadn't decided to go to the bathroom and bumped into me in the bar and all these type of things, and when these footballing events happen, the fact that it's not that there is so many chemical reactions that have to happen that did happen or didn't happen, and again, that's why we love football, I suppose, and sport and life in general. It's there's so many lucky things, and I've been lucky over the years. I've had a lot of bad luck as well, but so many sort of magical things that have happened in football for me that especially with people like Brian Robson at United. I ended up with the United team in Bangkok, and I'm thinking, how did this happen? And it's just because I just bumped into him 2 or 3 years earlier, and we got on, and my wife and Brian's wife got on, and it's just a great thing. And then you try and reverse engineer it. And you think, well, you can't, because you could do the same thing again, but it would have different outcomes. So
I have a great affinity with Brian Robson because I think it's this way around. I think he's a week older than I am. It's
right,
either that or the other way around. So when you're going, if I'd have been a player, if I'd have made it as a pro, that's where I would have been. It was always Brian Robson because I knew when his birthday was.
Great stuff. No, he's a really nice bloke. He's unlucky in Thailand, actually. There's a lot of politics in Thailand, Thai football. That he's a bit nasty in the back there, but it was great to sort of get
the opposite with me and with Eric. I can never believe that United fans pick Roy Keane over Robson.
No, I
can never believe that.
No, it might be a bit of kind of immediacy bias, perhaps. I don't know. But you look at what Brian did and what he went through with the injuries, and just amazing. He lifted that team up by the scruff of his neck in a way. It always reminds me a little bit of Kenny Dalglish. A Dalglish he just would not accept anything less than 100%.
I see. I would make the comparison with Steven Gerrard. Both of them were at very successful clubs during relatively unsuccessful periods, although Robson did get his league title medal at the end and Gerrard didn't. But they both were Captain Marvel figures who did the team to heights that the rest of the players were not capable of.
Yeah, I remember that goal Gerrard scored against West Ham. Again, this idea that one player has such unbelievable power and strength and weight of character that they can say to 10 other players, I'm not having this. I have to win this game, and you are going to help me win it. And there's maybe half a dozen players probably we could, at maximum, that we could name that could do that, like Cantona could, And even if Cantona wasn't doing it, you felt like he was influencing it from other players. And I think they wanted to please him as well. When you have these characters like Cantona, players are, they're people. They want to be liked, and when they respect someone like him, they want to do something that gets some kudos with him. And I think that's another thing that Cantona added to the United DNA in a way, really.
Speaking of volleys, that's another Eric 1-0, the step back volley in 95-96 in the cup final.
Yeah, that was a terrible game, wasn't it?
Worst cup final of all time, by the way.
But to win it 1-0 and clinch the double in a nothing game with an excellent volley from...
Was that the white suits one, Pete?
That was the white suits game.
Spice Boys.
Yeah.
That was Robbie Fowler. I told you about it in Bangkok. Yeah.
As we start to wrap it up, so essentially, Matt, your assertion is no treble, but more memories.
That would be where I would go, Peter. Yeah, a wonderful memories we take with us, but perhaps not victories that we can notch up for in a sort of almost kind of logical and mechanical way.
So we would have Manchester City as the only English club that has ever won the league, FA Cup, and Champions League treble.
Yes, that would jar, wouldn't it, with one half of Manchester?
As champions as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, get that one in,
indeed,
Peter.
there's another what if the Champions League was only for champions? Manchester United would not have been in the competition that season.
There's so many things for a second book here, guys. I tell you what, it's going to be a long-running saga.
Yeah, Matt, that's been brilliant.
My pleasure. Been really nice to talk to you guys.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant, and thank you to everyone who has listened. We will catch you next time.
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. Every football fan has a what-if moment that they know would have brought their team glory if things had turned out differently. Every what-if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate amongst football fans. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones and let us know what's your favourite what-if moment in football history.